Jurassic Park. Now playing the theater.
Ecto goggles with Ecto Bomber, Neutron Blaster, and Water Zapper, each sold separately.
From the corner penthouse of Spook Central all the way to Star Killer Base, this is Yes Have Some Podcast.
Do I? Yes, have some. Yes, have some.
You know, they told me you people were conceited douchebags.
The only place in the multiverse where you can love the book, hate the movie, but still buy all the toys.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master.
A what?
Please remember to hold on to your butts and get ready to get stressed. With your hosts, Craig Goldberg, Abigail Gardner, and Jacob Walsh.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Yes Have Some Podcast. My name is Craig Goldberg. It's episode 162, and you know what that means. 161 was last week.
Oh.
Did you guys think it was like a special thing?
I got very confused and stressed for a second. I was like, what was I supposed to do something? Like, is this special?
Is this like an event?
It's always special when I'm here with my co-hosts, Abigail Gardner.
7 more episodes to 169.
Oh,
I thought that was the event.
Well, that's going to be a good one.
What are we doing for that?
Probably Bill and Ted.
Cool.
Jake, what's up, man?
No, not too much. Hey, do you guys, I just want to run something by you guys really quick.
Okay.
So I had a movie on at work today.
Nice.
Cool.
And I was thinking, do you know what movie is so much better than it really has any business being? It's Space Jam.
What? No way.
Well, like, don't
Get
you
out
think,
of
like,
town.
well, listen. If you think about the plot, so like on paper, if you look at the plot of Space Jam, like, hey, we're going to take a bunch of basketball stars and have them act opposite of a bunch of cartoons. That sounds dumb, right? Like, doesn't that sound like I'm not going to watch that? But that movie's so good.
Bill Murray is really good in it.
He is so funny in that.
Larry Bird is weirdly funny in it for some reason.
It's weird because like I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, Michael Jordan is awful. He is not a good actor. But it's like part of it has to do with like the soundtrack was really good when that came out. Like everybody loved the Space Jam soundtrack. There's a lot of good actors in that. Wayne Knight is very funny in that. Danny DeVito does a voice. And like Bill Murray's scenes are very like Venkman-like. There's that one scene where when Michael Jordan first disappears, Wayne Knight's character is like taking a picture of him. And Bill Murray's like, he says something like, what kind of camera is that?
Yeah.
And then he's like, don't point that at me. And he knocks it out of his hand. I'm just like, this whole thing, the whole idea of this movie sounds awful. It sounds like it would be bad, but the movie's so good.
Now, I've always thought it was bad, but I think I almost want to go back and watch it now that you're saying it is good.
It's so funny. Like, I don't know, man.
It's like kind of how I feel about Batman Forever. Where it's
when I was a kid, here's the thing. When I was a kid, like, this sounds weird to be a kid and think this, but I liked anytime it was just the humans, I loved it, and I didn't really like the cartoon parts as much. It is weird, but it's because I was like, it's because of what you just said. Like, Murray is very very Peter Venkman-esque in his delivery and the way he carries himself, and he wears that giant umbrella hat.
Whenever Bill Murray randomly shows up on the court, and like there's no reason for him to be there or how he got there, and the monster that's voiced by Danny DeVito goes, I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this picture.
See, now it's like it's my favorite movie.
Funny.
No,
That is so funny.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. It's weird. We should do it. We should all rewatch it and do like a bonus episode on Space Jam because it's a weird, like, I don't know. It should be awful, but
you're saying it's a treat. Enjoyable. It's a real treat.
It is. Yeah.
I like that. Well, when I was a kid, I would get mad that it was inaccurate. Like all the baseball scenes, I was like, this is not what happened. I kept up with Michael Jordan's career.
Lola Bunny. I couldn't find the name. I liked her. I was into Lola.
Yeah. She's all right.
She's cool. I have a Lola Bunny coffee mug that says, don't ever call me doll. Mm-hmm. And I love it. So I like Space Jam just by like the things I own
that mug.
from it and that time in my life. But I have not gone back and watched it and like given it a good, like, you know, a good viewing. So maybe I need to.
there's some bad performances, but then there are a few performances that it's like, this is Space Jam. Why were they bringing this kind of heat in Space Jam?
I'll put it this way. It's Michael Jordan's best movie. And the sequel is being made right now, and we won't talk about that because it's blasphemous. But LeBron James is in it. But if they can get Bill Murray back, maybe it'll be funny. Listen, everybody, welcome to episode 162 of Yes Have Some Podcast. We've got a lot going on in our lives. Coming up here in a little bit, we've got our interview. We don't always do interviews, but sometimes you got to have somebody on who's going to give you a little knowledge and kind of take you down memory lane. And that's what we did.
It felt like an actual job interview because all the things we were talking about was this person's like work experience.
Yeah.
It felt kind of like a course. It kind of felt like I could probably go work for Mattel now.
I know about
you know what I mean? It felt like
and intellectual properties and licensing.
Yeah. The licensing.
You're all gonna find out what that is.
Jake, we want you to go relaunch Matty Collector with your new knowledge that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I probably could, right?
So we have our interview with Scott Neitlich. If you probably remember him, if you are a Ghostbusters toy collector, he was the toy guru. He started and ran Matty Collector for basically the entire run. And we've been talking about the Mattel Ghostbusters figures a lot lately. And I'm nostalgic for it, which is, it's weird when you're nostalgic for things that happened in your adult life, but I've now been an adult longer than I was a child. So I'm longing for the early days of adulthood. So Scott was great. It's a long interview, but there's a ton of really cool information in there. Learned a lot of stuff I didn't learn, or didn't know.
Learned the background on like how the barge works basically. And like that
kind
whole,
of,
like, payment plan type of,
the subscription stuff.
Service,
And Scott was a really nice guy, and I really enjoyed talking with him. So that's going to be coming up. But we got to, I don't know, do a little stress here.
Do our thing.
Here's the thing. I want to let everybody know about this. Yes Have Some Podcast is doing our very first ever live podcast event. It is happening at DragonCon 2019. It is going to happen Saturday, 1 p.m. in the Marriott. M103 is the room. It is the Sci-Fi American Classics track. That's the room it's in. Yes Have Some Podcasts live, 1 o'clock after the parade. You're done with the parade. Make your way right over to the panel room. We are going to be talking.
We'll do our group photo there, so
we'll do something.
Come on. That's my big plan. I always direct everybody. One year, I had everyone following me to the photo spot, and I didn't know where I was going.
Just walking.
We ended up indoors.
No, it's going to be good. So we're going to do YHS Live. We're going to be talking about Ghostbusters 3. We're going to be talking about Gremlins. We're going to be doing a little stress. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we are very, very pumped for that. And we're going to be around DragonCon all weekend. And in the next couple weeks, we'll be talking more about the PKE Surge schedule. But go ahead and mark your calendars. And when the app comes out for DragonCon, put a big old star next to Yes Have Some Podcast Live, 1 p.m. Saturday at DragonCon. Jake, what's your excitement level? You ready to talk with these people? I'm talking about Cruise Shadows the entire time.
I'm hoping. I mean, I might not. I just might not show up.
Yeah, Jake's going to be in line for the Cruise Shadows concert. Here's the thing. I have a feeling there's a chance we could just do an hour of. We could literally just do DragonCon stress, and that would be the live show.
Yeah.
Because we talk about all the weird things that have happened to us at DragonCon or experiences about when we decided it's 2 a.m. Let's see what the drum circle is like. Yeah. Hey, we've been going to DragonCon for 12 years. Let's go see what the drum circle room is like. We could. There's so many things we could talk about. Like, I know the title is, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, and kind of, sequels, but I'm like, how much of this time are we going to spend talking about just random stuff?
Here's the thing.
That's
the whole thing.
That's how you get people in the door.
Yeah.
You get people in the door. You give them the big names.
But then we do none of it.
We should have put Deadpool in there.
We should have been like,
oh fuck. You're right.
Deadpool panel.
Deadpool costume tutorial.
We should have named our panel we should name our panel John Barrowman signing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an
He'll
hour
be here
of
any minute, folks.
He'll be here soon. Meanwhile, let's talk about Cobra Kai. Because speaking of Cobra Kai, I'm actually very stressed because Ralph Macchio and the guy who played Johnny Lawrence and the guy who played John Kreese, they're all going to be at Dragon Con. And it was just announced. And I want to get a photo with them.
Big Karate Kid reunion.
God, I went to. Did I ever told you guys about the time I went to the Sundance and the Slam Dance Film Festival, and I saw a movie that Ralph Macchio was in, and it was in. So Slam Dance is like Sundance is like the big, with all the like artsy movies and all the bigger movies. Slam Dance is like kind of the smaller thing that goes on in the same location at the same time.
Okay.
And I was watching a movie that Ralph Macchio was in, and he was sitting like 2 rows in front of me. Cause it's like, you're not even in a real theater. It's Slam Dance. You're just in like rooms and they would just project it. And the movie, I got the program somewhere. I can go figure out what the movie was. It was the worst thing I saw. And he was so excited to sit there and watch it. And he seemed so happy. And he was such a nice dude. And he was just so excited to be there. But the movie sucked.
Wait, was it called?
Can we talk about
I don't know. I would have to go find my That was like 10 years ago. I would have to find the program and look through and see what the movie was called. But
are you sure it was called Slam Dance and not the All Valley Karate Tournament you were attending?
Oh, but that's great because that reminds me of other experiences of us watching movies with the person who starred in them or directed, like close by.
It's weird, right?
Scott Hall was like sitting in the same row as us.
Jake the Snake?
Or Jake the Snake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was.
And Paul Feig was in our theater when we watched Answer the Call for the first time. So that's a similar experience.
I don't think he stayed.
You don't think?
Probably not.
I would have gotten out.
So listen, Dragon Con, 1 p.m. Saturday. We're going to be plugging it hard for the next couple weeks, but we want everybody to be there. If you're going to be at Dragon Con, come hang out with us, and it's going to be fun. Maybe we'll take some questions from the audience. People can try to I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
And then Abby is, what do you got going on here?
Hey, am I going to announce my own thing? Yeah. Sure. I am going to be at, I'm kidding, I'm like nervous. I'm excited.
All right, come on. Okay, you can do it.
I'm so honored. No. I was added to a panel called Awesome Women in Digital Media.
Don't know why they didn't add me, but...
Don't know why Jake and Craig aren't going to be on it. I think they should, storm out. But yeah, it says meet some of the best women in the digital media industry, get inspiration and motivation no matter your gender or identity from leaders in the field. So, hey, I'm a leader. And one of the other people on this panel is a doctor. So I'm very excited.
So now you're a doctor.
So now I am a doctor.
Let me ask you this. Is this your revenge for not being on the Jurassic Park panel last year?
100%.
She set this up.
I said, put me on something that they can't do. So it's just me. I'm excited about this. I don't feel like I'm going to have to prepare. I feel like I'm probably just going to be talking about like what we do, which is, squeeze stress balls and record podcasts. What do we do? Talk to people about toys.
Here's a question. What the fuck are we doing? Why did I just
sneaking on the panels and shit? Hey, I'm going to spend the entire time at Dragon Con seeing how many panels I can just like weasel my way onto.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be here.
Dude,
this panel is horse shit.
Here's the thing. Why did we just spend an hour on the phone with the guy who ran Matty Collector? Like, what are we doing with our lives, man? I love it, man.
I think he works for us now.
He does. I hired him.
It was a job interview.
We're doing Yes Have Some Toys, but we're going to be reusing all of the tooling available. So it's going to be...
Oh, wait. We can do that.
Courtroom Abby.
Oh, my God.
Ready to believe you, Jake.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be Vigo.
Cool. Gypsy, Gizmo, and Jonesy are the unproduced terror dogs.
Spoilers.
Whoa, shit. Take that out.
I won't.
Sorry, guys.
Can't edit. I have no interest in editing this podcast.
We did when we started.
So I'm excited about Dragon Con very much. And guys, I got a little story for you. I was my day job, I was shamed today by somebody.
Oh. Okay, what happened?
So this girl who I don't know really well, she was like, "Hey, you like Ghostbusters?" And I was like, do you want to fight? Like, what do you want to say to me about it? I was wearing one of my new Fright Rags Ghostbuster shirts, which I'm not going to lie.
Spoiler alert, I have the same one.
I looked really good.
And good looking.
She was like, "Oh, I got to tell you something." She's like, me and my boyfriend were at this estate sale. And we found this, like little Slimer action figure toy from the 70s. And I went like,
Oh, no, you didn't.
Is that wrong?
That's what I said. I was like, oh, did you? You liar.
You get the fuck out of here.
I was like,
Fired.
take your lies and your deceit and get away from me. And if I ever see you again, actually, I contained myself, but I did like, I had to like a little while later. I was like, actually, I was
God,
like,
I hope this story is going where it's like literally a Slimer that you could go buy right now or something.
no, it was actually the Kenner. We actually had a good conversation about it. She's like, well, we got it for $1. It was missing some of the meat. And I was like, oh, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the Kenner Green Ghost action figures, series 1 from the Ghost line of Kenner's The Real Ghostbusters action figures from 1986. So get your 1970s bullshit out of my fucking face. No. She sold it. That's not where the shame came in.
Okay.
So
she shamed you?
It's coming up.
Okay.
Later on, minutes later, she was walking out. She goes, oh, I went to the Ghostbusters firehouse when I was in New York. Have you ever been there? And I put my head down and I said,
you've already upset me once.
I said, I've never been to the firehouse in Tribeca. I've never been to the Ghostbusters firehouse. And she looks at me and she goes, oh, I thought you were a real fan. And just walked away. So
she got you.
Oof.
What I want to say to her is if you ever try to sell an incomplete Slimer on eBay again, I'm going to bid up on it so high that I will not pay you. Over and over again, I will start
Get
new
her on
eBay.
the line.
Go back to the 70s.
Yeah, so get back to... Oh, really? Which episode of that 70s show was your Slimer from, ma'am? Honestly, she's so nice. I hope she never listens. She's like one of the nicest people in the world. I embellish this story just a little bit.
At least we like it.
But listen, 70s Ghostbusters. This isn't Alice we're talking about here.
No, man.
I guess we should go to the firehouse.
Yeah. I 100% agree.
Jake, you've been there?
It's on our list.
I have been there, yeah.
But we've never been there together.
Yeah.
So it doesn't count.
I've been there once, and I spent the longest amount of time I could before the people I were with were like, okay, like let's get the fuck out of here.
Wait, didn't you go there? Like you dropped your kid off at school in your ecto, and then you went there on your birthday? Was that you?
No.
Guys, I'm being saucy tonight.
You are.
Yeah, you are.
Abby, tell the Alice story.
Oh, yeah. We actually talked about that in our interview. We picked up Migos has a line with a soft, like, is that Migos?
The rap group?
The rap group. The stir fry? No, sorry, everyone. I'm talking about the Migo, the action figures that you can find at Target. They're based on like a lot of 70s shows, like the Brady Bunch,
Real
Ghostbusters, Charmed, a couple other shows, whatever. They're on deep discount right now. They're all like $4. And Craig and I have, I guess, an interest in the Alice, like, because we were once in a Target.
Alice from Brady Bunch.
Alice from the Brady Bunch. Yeah, we were having like a difference of words, Craig and I, and we saw somebody returning the Alice, and we felt like we stopped fighting because it was so funny. We were both acknowledged the fact that somebody was returning an Alice. So we ended up buying an Alice figure, which was on discount in the past couple days for like $4 from Target, and took it home. And since then, we've just been threatening to fire her because she hasn't done anything around the house. So I shared that on our Instagram story yesterday, and I think a lot of people were sympathetic to Alice.
It's kind of like an Elf on the Shelf situation.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to put her on the roof, be like Alice on the Palace, and just like every day you wake up and she's in a different spot, vacuuming, wishing Sam would propose.
Yeah.
And guys, I tried to rewatch the Brady Bunch, like the TV show.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It doesn't hold up.
But the movies are great.
I was obsessed with it as a kid because it would come on after the Batman TV show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jake, have you bought anything better than Alice lately?
I'm trying to think here. I don't think I have. I've been keeping it kind of toned down, not been buying a whole lot since we got Dragon Con coming up and stuff like that. That 1 week of Comic Con and Chronicle collectibles and realizing I'm like, okay, I'm on some payment plans now. Mm-hmm. I don't think I bought anything. I'm sitting here trying to think. No, I don't think I've bought anything. I bought last thing I bought was the NECA Rodan figure from Godzilla King of the Monsters. I found that at GameStop, but that's the only thing.
Dang.
I'm depressed now.
Yeah, what the fuck?
I'm going to Walmart,
dude.
Please buy
as soon
something.
as we're done. I have been like on the lookout for Halloween stuff is starting to come out, and I have been buying like a few Halloween decorations here and there, but those are not really the kind of things that we talk about.
We could talk about your Halloween decorations.
Talk about it.
It's nothing
I
fancy.
just hope nobody's driving. Let's talk about Halloween Horror Nights. So we're going to be going down to Orlando for Horror Nights in October. Not giving out the exact date because, well, frankly, I'd like to not be mobbed by the millions.
After the one person that recognized us last year.
Yes.
Did somebody recognize us last year?
I feel like it.
In line.
In line.
We were in line and somebody knew who we were, yeah.
I was like,
you
sir.
never forget
I was like,
that.
sir, sorry, I'm with my family. No pictures.
That was fun. No, that was cool.
No, we're gonna be we're locking down our plans. We'll let everybody know when we're gonna be there. But we're gonna be down at Horror Nights, and obviously they've got Ghostbusters this year, Universal Monsters, Stranger Things. They just announced Us is going to be a house.
Oh my god.
I'm excited about that.
Dude, yes.
Because even if Us wasn't as good as Get Out or whatever, like I feel like there's a lot you can do with it that will make a cool house.
You can form the chain of people for sure.
I'm excited that it's that and not like I don't think Us is the best movie ever. It was fine, but I would be more excited about seeing a house based on that than like, you know, another Blumhouse. Like, you know, that house we went to last year that was like
Happy Death Day
house it was really bad. Which by the way, since then I have watched both of the Happy Death Day movies, and the first one's not bad. But that house was really bad. So like, I'm excited that it will be something, you know, it'll at least be something fun. I am bummed out that this Creepshow house is only in Hollywood.
Oh yeah. I'm not happy about that at all.
Yeah. But I wonder if to compensate, like there's going to be a house that's Florida only and not in Hollywood.
What would be like an ideal, like if you could pick like we've always said Ghostbusters, is there like, you know, I don't think they would ever do this. And I think like maybe they have done it. I don't know. Have they ever done like an alien house or aliens?
I don't know, but that'd be great.
That would be cool.
I think Alien would be perfect for a house. I would like to see a house that's just a Stephen King house and each room is a different Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised. Well, maybe there's rights issues, but I think an It house is like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a possibility for this year.
Yeah. Or an Overlook. Like, well, there was a Shining.
I mean, they did Shining.
Yeah, we did that.
But like, just in the same way that Blumhouse was like multiple movies in one house, I think that would be cool if you did if you just did Stephen King and then you could do like
you go
a
to
Shining
garage,
room. Yeah, there could
Christine.
be Yeah, for real. Like Cujo, you could do there. You know, there's 100 movies you could do with Stephen King.
Pet Seminary.
Studying to teach the Bible.
Yeah, where all the dogs become ministers. Jake, Pet Semetary's out now, digital and DVD. Have we rewatched it? Are we going to revisit that movie?
I would like to check it out again. I have not yet though. It's on my list. I would like to give it a second run. Also, Godzilla comes out on digital next week, which seems pretty quick, but I'm not complaining.
What? Not quick enough. I need time to speed up. I'm ready for this new Ghostbusters movie.
Now.
And let's just go ahead and have this discussion. Shoots and ladders.
Okay.
I'm so annoyed with this ladder thing.
All right. I have
Right.
stayed so far away from this. I don't want to get any spoilers right now.
We're not going to spoil anything.
It's not a spoiler.
This is not a spoiler. Here's the thing. Hold on. I gotta readjust here.
He's readjusting the table.
I gotta get. This is very serious. Okay. You don't just talk to Matty Collector people. It takes a village, people. I don't know what that means.
It takes the village people.
It takes the village people. What if the Village people were in that movie, The Village? Like that was the big reveal. Like they go to the outside of the forest and it's just like the YMCA.
Cool.
Okay.
That would be amazing.
Sorry.
I'll watch that.
But if it was like Wayne and Garth.
She's like, oh my God. It's like, oh, what is, it's a construction worker and an Indian and a police officer. Okay. So what's happening? I guess we need to address this in some form. There's a lot of set photos and leaks happening from the new Ghostbusters movie, which happens. Like they're filming in a public area. There's people around, people taking pictures. We kind of made a vow that we're not going to be anything that's not an official release. We're not going to be like sharing it or reposting it. There's a million other places where that's happening, but it's no secret that some pictures of the Ecto-1 were out this week from the set. It was driving around. Who knows what it was? They could have been doing tests. I didn't see any cameras. I don't know. The Ecto-1 was driving up and down the road. Very cool. Spoiler alert, it's the Ecto-1. It's a dirtier, older version of the Ecto-1. And it sparked a lot of discussion, a lot of angry discussion, a lot of weird, like, people just talking about this isn't right, and why aren't the windows tinted, and why isn't the ladder on the right? And it was just, and it was like, why isn't it the Ecto-1A? Why isn't there a Ghostbusters 2? Like, it was just all this stuff, and it got to the point where, Jake, I know you made a Facebook post about it, just kind of being like, hey, everybody, calm down. But Jake, I want to give you the floor to drive home the point that you were making.
Okay, well, there have been a lot of people complaining, and I think it's pretty dumb. And then you also got another group of people that are complaining that people are complaining about the people complaining, which that is just stupid. But the reason I made a post, I don't post a whole lot on Facebook. My whole reason that I made this post was it doesn't matter that something is, quote, wrong on the car, because the point is that this is Ghostbusters 3, and it's in the movie. Therefore, it is not wrong. It's just canon. Any changes that are made, that's what the car is now. When Ghostbusters 2 came out, I'm not sure what it was like, but were people like, the car's wrong? No, it's just different because this is the car in part 1. This is what the car looks like in part 2. In part 3, which takes 30 years... takes place 30 years past the first one. The car was already an old piece of shit in the first movie. Things change. Things break. Sometimes you have to move the ladder around the car to get to the top of the other side of the car.
And who are you going to call?
It's just not it's not wrong. It's canon.
It's now canon.
It's just different from the first movie. Shut the fuck up.
The other discussion
Well said. Thank you, Jake.
The other discussion that I keep seeing people like, well, I thought, does this mean that there was an Ecto-1 and an Ecto-1A and they were two different cars? Blah, blah, blah. It's just like, maybe. Who cares? But who cares? And also the people who are like, well, I at least hope they have a scene that explains why the ladder's on the other side. I was like, I bet they don't.
Yeah, that's what we want. That's what, hey, Ghostbusters 3, first time in 30 years we're getting a true sequel to Ghostbusters. I want them to waste time on telling me why Ray had to get to the top of the other side of the car.
Like, seriously,
it's like, this is what I said. The script for this movie is probably, 100, 110 pages, maybe 120. Every word is valuable. Every scene, every moment is valuable. But if we could just get a
Am
cold
I on
open,
crack or is that a good logo?
He's like
Jesus Christ.
It's like C-3PO. You might not recognize me because the ladder's on the other side.
Yeah, they didn't explain why C-3PO's arm was red until the comic books like 6 months later. So if we could just get an Ecto prequel that
yeah.
I
Tell
think
us about that one day that Ray had to get a sandwich out of his bag and move the ladder over.
Hey, I think Ectotron showed up from planet Vulcan or wherever he lives and switched around the ladders just as a goof.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to see what we do. And look at us now. We're all fighting.
I still think it's not nearly as bad as it was in 2016, but I was talking to Troy Benjamin and Chris Stewart from the Ghostbusters Interdimensional Crossover, and boy, I'm not gonna lie, I told them, man, it's gonna be a long year if this is where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So hopefully we won't
Positively.
I don't want any more set leaks. I don't want to see anything.
I don't either, but unfortunately, the only way that we're not going to see set leaks is to just stay off of the internet or to unfriend every single person that we are friends with on Facebook and Instagram, because we have too many Ghostbusters friends to not see this. It's just going to happen. I've been trying to steer clear of. I unfollowed. I'm in a few like Stephen King groups on Facebook, and I had to unfollow a few because I'm starting to see like spoilery pictures from it, and it's only a month out, and I don't want to see anything else. And I'm like sitting here thinking like, there's I can kind of control it with it.
Yeah,
it's not gonna. Look, we're 100%. We have to get it in our heads right now. We are not going into Ghostbusters 3 spoiler free. We're not. It's not. There's no way we could do that.
I think we get a bunker like in Cloverfield and we stay underground. Nobody gets online. For a year.
I can imagine like 7 months from now, we're doing the show and we're still like, our Ghostbusters 3 knowledge just ends tonight. and everyone else is listening to the show and they're like, guys, you are wrong.
We're just like, okay, so we don't know anything past the ladder, but here's what we're actually like speculating on it.
Yeah, everyone else knows the plot of the movie at this point.
Right. There's
every
like
actor.
There's leaked pictures.
Trailers.
Not sure the story behind the ladder yet. But.
Oh my god. But anyways, filming's still underway, and not a whole lot of news other than we're not. There's been a couple other things that leaked out, but we're not even going to talk about them here. It's nothing major, but it's definitely spoiler territory. Mm-hmm. And yeah, of course, it's great to see the Ecto. And because we already saw the Ecto in the teaser trailer, we know it's going to be in the movie. It's kind of like, okay, whatever. But I don't want to see Bill Murray with a slime blower on leaked picture or something.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like, and then there's all these people like, oh, Bill Murray was on set and Dan Aykroyd's on set. Like, whatever. We don't know. We don't want to know.
We don't know. What's better is to go to McKenna Grace's Instagram, watch her stories, and she's been going to like Toys R Us with what's the
Logan Kim.
Logan Kim, thank you. Her and Logan Kim have been going and frequenting Toys R Us's in Calgary because they're still open, and I like that shit. I like to see them hanging out, and it makes me more excited for the film. So yeah,
better not be.
I don't want to see a ladder. I don't want to.
Better not be a bunch of junior Ghostbusters running around.
I hope Finn Wolfhard's driving the goddamn Ecto.
Me too.
Yeah.
I hope he's made up a song. He's like, Stranger things, Ghostbusters is happening to me.
I hope it's that scene. No, I hope it's like the scene from Batman and Robin where Robin steals the Batmobile.
Oh,
and
Batman
he's
Forever.
like, Batman Forever. And he's like, I'm Batman, Finn Wolfhard's like, I'm a Ghostbuster. And people are like, what?
And then that guy from Batman Forever is like, that ain't Peter Venkman.
Yes, that's what I say. Yes. Hey, Egon.
Hey, that ain't the Egon. That ain't the Egon.
That ain't the Egon.
Sorry, I forgot my jumpsuit.
That's canon now. The Egon. Because it's canon.
By the way, Abby, you posted a picture of Finn Wolfhard.
Post it.
Or you
sent it to you. I found a picture of Finn Wolfhard on Instagram that was from a fan account that was from a recent magazine, something he was doing. And it was a black and white photo of him, and he's like laughing and smiling with his eyes half closed, and he looks just like Harold Ramis. There's a photo from Ghostbusters' Daughter by Violet Ramis Steele, and I went and had to pull that book off the shelf and like leaf through it to find the photo so I could take a picture of it and send you like the side by side, because they look so similar. Their hair length is at like that big bushy beautiful spot.
Whatever. I looked at that picture. I was like, that ain't the Egon.
That ain't the Egon.
Dude, the other thing is like, I still have to pinch myself that we're getting a new Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's happening.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, let's get to this interview with Scott, the toy guru Neitlich, who we spent a lot of time with him learning about the toy industry, learning about Matty Collector. before we sign off and get to the interview, any other news or notes?
No.
Cool.
That's it.
Well, before we get to the interview, we do want to let everybody know that Patreon is a thing. If you want to become part of the Yes Have Some Patreon community and get in on all of these bonus episodes, you're going to go to patreon.com/yeshavesome, sign up for $5 a month. You are going to get in on the bonus episodes. You also immediately will get access to our complete archive of bonus content. That's patreon.com/yeshavesome. New bonus episodes coming this month. And I want to do like an hour with Chase Ambrose. I want to get him drunk and just record with him for an hour and just see and put it out as a bonus episode.
Well, all we have to do is we'll just do that at DragonCon. We'll just interview him for between the hours of 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Saturday night of DragonCon.
It'll be perfect.
Cool.
So make sure you check out Yes Have Some Patreon. Thank you so much to all of our new signups, and thank you to everybody for supporting. We absolutely cannot thank you enough for the support. We really appreciate it. And while you're at it, make sure that you check us out on social media at YHS Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, the official Facebook community, the Facebook group, Yes Have Some Group Therapy. Abby, how do you get there?
So easy. You log into Facebook, search for Yes Have Some Podcast. You will find our page. You will scroll down and see Yes Have Some Podcast Group Therapy pop up as an option. We have over 600 members at this point. I am super pumped on that. So you should become one of them. Click Ask to Join, and either myself, Craig, or Jake will accept you. And from there on, you can just post some quality content and share whatever you're stressing about, whatever toys you want, whatever movie you want to see, or whatever book you're reading. You can talk about it with us. And we're here for you. It's a good space. So join up.
Absolutely. All right. Well, having said all of that, let's get to the interview coming up right now from Matty Collector, former marketing manager for Mattel, Scott Neitlich, the toy guru, talking Ghostbusters and the history of Matty Collector right here on Yes Have Some Podcast. Thank you, everybody, and on to the interview.
I want to think about the interview.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yes Have Some Podcasts right now. The former Matty Collector, marketing director and manager, Scott Neitlich, better known to the toy community as Toy Guru, or formerly the Toy Guru. Scott, welcome to Yes Have Some Podcast.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. It's always a thrill to talk to toy fans and talk toy.
Talking toys. We try to we
speak toy.
We speak toy. We always have. But no, we really appreciate you taking a few minutes to hang out with us. We obviously are giant Ghostbusters fans. We're toy collectors. We're very, we could talk for hours about our favorite Ghostbusters toys, all the way from real Ghostbusters to Mattel to all the new stuff. But I guess before we kind of start getting into it, for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with you or what you do or your history, why we talk to you about Ghostbusters toys. Maybe you could fill us in how you first got involved in the toy business.
Why would anyone talk to me? Let's see. Well, I got into officially in the toy business about 2005 when I was first hired at Mattel. I had essentially been knocking on their door for years. Growing up in Southern California, Mattel was right off the freeway, and I'd always see that big red gear. My father actually had a colleague growing up whose husband was an executive at Mattel and used to bring us, like random Mattel toys sometimes when we'd visit my father's office. So I always kind of knew Mattel in the background, that it was there. And after college, I started applying and immediately was told to pound sand and that I had to get some engineering degree if I wanted to go into toy making, which I knew was not going to happen because I'm not an engineer in any way. So I went into medical marketing, essentially. Marketing pharmaceutical products and doing, I was on a glaucoma account for 4 years. I could tell you more about glaucoma than you ever didn't want to know.
Cool. We'll have you next week on our pharmaceutical podcast.
Can't wait. So many questions.
Excellent. As long as we're covering hairless cats, that's fine.
Perfect. That's what our specialty is.
of my interests, actually.
So essentially, I kept sort of knocking on Mattel's door, and eventually, it was actually through San Diego Comic-Con that I had my portfolio with me. It was actually to share with someone completely different, but I wound up in a one-on-one meeting with a brand manager at Mattel who was working on the Justice League Unlimited line, which I was also a huge, huge fan of that toy line. And I was showing him my portfolio, and I never really thought about this, but medical marketing and toy marketing overlaps in the sense that they both have a lot of regulations, legal regulations for safety.
Okay,
and the
that
fact
makes sense.
That I was, so the fact that I was skilled at navigating the legal aspects of marketing through pharma was a skill set Mattel was actually looking for. So, which again, I would have never really thought. That was my foot in the door. And I was at Comic-Con because I was a lifelong toy fan. I was collecting Justice League toys and He-Man toys and all sorts of stuff. So long story short is that got me an interview at Mattel. I wound up at Hot Wheels as a copywriter for 2 years. And during that time, I essentially through a very odd series of events was able to connect with the general manager, Tim Kilpin, who gave me a one-on-one meeting where I pitched the idea of doing adult collector figures, essentially saying that, look, I'm spending a couple $100 a month on toys, and none of them are from my own company.
Yeah,
and we have some great licenses.
Mm-hmm.
What year would you say that was?
This would have been like 06, 07.
Yeah, and that makes sense because people forget, like, it just kind of didn't exist. Maybe some specialty stores, comic stores like McFarlane stuff back then, but like for the most part, like what we have today, like we're essentially spoiled with just the amount of toys geared towards collectors and just the sheer variety of product that's available. I think people kind of forget it was kind of a wasteland.
Yeah, that adult collectibles section in Target didn't exist like way back when.
I mean, the Target adult collectible section didn't exist like a year ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
so,
I mean, what we call, like none of the Funko and Sideshow and all of these companies, they were not around, and what we were collecting were just kid toys that we as collectors wanted to buy. If they weren't designed for adults. We were just like, ooh, Star Wars toys, ooh, He-Man toys, I'll buy those. So it was a very emerging market, and Mattel wasn't doing anything about it. Hasbro was kind of. Not Hasbro, that was on Toy Biz, had Marvel Legends. And that was, I think that was really kind of the birth of adult collector was McFarlane and Marvel Legends putting stuff out. So, cool. I made that pitch that Mattel should be taking advantage of this because we had these great licenses. And they gave me a shot. They moved me from the packaging group over into marketing. I sat at literally a fold-out table with an old computer against the corner wall, and they gave me kind of 90 days to put together a business plan, and I had no idea what I was doing because I'd never done a business plan, but I managed to get some help from, it wasn't just me, obviously, putting Matty together. I had Jim Murphy and Johnny O'Neill. There were a few people in the marketing group that really helped me put together the logistics in the beginning, and we basically then brought that to management and said, look, it's a very kind of low-cost thing. We can take existing tools, which means the mold, the existing, kind of figure bucks, and plus them up and do more obscure characters and aim it directly at this emerging market. Mm-hmm. And Justice League was meant to be kind of the lifeblood of Matty Collector in the sense that it was at market. It was on shelf. These were the 5-inch Bruce Timm figures.
Right.
From the animated series. And there were so many characters in the show at that point, and the fans online were asking for so many different characters that was what I actually thought would be what could carry Matty Collector, because we could do, essentially unlimited DC superheroes with existing parts. We wouldn't need that many new arms and legs, here and there, a cape. And then the idea of doing He-Man was very secondary. We just thought, well, we also have this nostalgic brand, and I was a huge He-Man fan as well. And we were just going to do 6 figures and call it a day. and, see if we could just kind of do sort of like a little mini homage line. But that wound up really taking off and becoming much bigger than I think anyone anticipated. And that really became the lifeblood of Matty, especially Justice League product didn't sell what I thought it would, and it kind of died off. But the He-Man line kept going. And we got to the point that we were actually becoming an asset to Mattel, where companies like Sony were coming up to us and saying, hey, we see what you're doing, and we think that something like Ghostbusters could be a part of that. And I was like, yes, that would be awesome. They approached us. And I was flipping out because Ghostbusters was a holy grail. It'd never really been done movie versions of the characters. We just had the animated Kenner guys when we were kids with the little twisty ecto packs and stuff, and all the pop-out features from the ghosts and the toilet ghosts and all that kind of stuff. So the idea of doing movie accurate, please.
No, well, so that's really interesting. So, I'll be honest, when I think about Matty Collector, I always think of, obviously Ghostbusters, but Masters of the Universe. But so you're thinking DC will be the lifeblood of this line, and we're going to kind of bust open this adult collectibles world, and Masters of the Universe and the nostalgia from that is what kind of opened the doors to all of these other opportunities. I guess one of my questions that I've always wondered is, I think a lot of people don't really understand, including me, how the toy industry works or how like retail distribution works at all. As toy collectors, it can be very frustrating, with especially with like something like Star Wars, where there's a lot of distribution issues and things like that. Was the decision made really early on to kind of do an online only subscription service, and like what was the thought process behind that?
Well, the subscription service and, kind of doing the monthly figures, that really just came out of necessity. When we were doing the He-Man figures, the first, we did, He-Man was the first, King Grayskull was the first at Comic-Con, but that was just kind of meant to launch everything. And then when we did He-Man, he took a while to sell out. He took like a month or two. And then Skeletor took like another month. And then when we did the third figure, Stratos, he sold out in like 3 days. And that was basically the turning point, because suddenly we had all these people screaming like, oh, I missed him. Like, well, oh my God, I can't have Stratos. Like, whoa, what's going on? And then, and then the other two, we were getting so much attention from the adult collector market because of that. We had to create the subscription model essentially to backfill the demand that people wanted it so much, to make sure, one, they could get it, but two, that became, as you were asking, bringing up about the retailers, all toy lines need a buyer in order to go forward, in order to sort of pay for the production, pay for the tooling. And for every toy line you see at retail, there's probably 5 or 6 that never made it. Some make it all the way to prototypes. Some, that's why you see, sometimes these weird things showing up on eBay. Some things never make it past drawings. A lot doesn't make it past drawings and what we call B sheets. But there are, the Legion of Superheroes line for the short-lived cartoon show, that made it all the way to working toys. That was supposed to ship to retail, and then retail, I think, got skittish on that line, and it never shipped. So that kind of thing happens all the time. And the subscription model wound up organically and in a way by fluke taking the place of retail orders. So essentially a retailer who they're shown, take something like Marvel Legends, they might be shown 1 or 2 waves of figures at a meeting. And based on that, they're going to order a year worth of product. And so the same thing really was a subscription. We were showing fans, the first couple figures that were done and asking them to commit to a year's worth of product.
Yeah. And I think
there were,
well, I think
go ahead.
Not to interrupt, but like, I think, so you mentioned like with He-Man and Skeletor taking about a month or whatever to sell out, but then the third figure going quickly. There's something like psychologically different as a collector from a one-off figure or 2 figures. When you have that realization that, oh, this is going to be a complete line of figures and there's going to be continued releases, there's almost more of an urgency to buy and to backfill the collection. Because I know, like, if there's a Star Wars line or a Ghostbusters line or whatever, and it seems like it's a one-off, I may or may not get it. But like what NECA's doing now with the Ninja Turtles line, I know they're going to be putting out 4, 8, 12 figures a year, and I have that like anxiety months before they're even out that like,
you can't fall behind.
You can't.
If you fall behind, you're done.
You're dead in the water, Jake.
Yeah.
No respect.
No, you really said it actually very well, and especially because the figures are out for a limited time, and you've got to buy them now, or you're not going to have a complete collection. And one of the things that anytime I was pitching a new line, whether it was retail or online, whether I was talking to toy executives or retailers or licensors, a term I always used was there was this, I guess, sort of unwritten rule between toy manufacturer and adult collector that if we're going to put out a line, we owe you a full shelf. Meaning, a great example is what Mattel wound up doing with Thundercats after I left. They barely started it, and to me, that's really hurtful because if you're asking people to buy into a line, exactly like you said, you're not that they shouldn't be. Our shelf space is very limited wherever we display our toys.
Yeah, it is.
And if you're asking someone to buy it and commit one of their few shelves to display your product, you better give them a really good display.
Yeah, no, completely. Like, because there's some, and I do think it is like for collectors, especially there's a very, psychology and marketing kind of go hand in hand. And that's kind of what you're talking about right now. If there's a new line of figures coming out and if I'm excited about it and I go to the store, obviously not Toys R Us anymore. It's basically down to Walmart, Target, and GameStop. If I just see one or two pieces of the line and I don't see the complete vision in front of me, I'm less likely to want to pursue, because it's expensive too. I mean, most figures these days, $25, $30, $35 a pop. It's a big commitment. But I'm also a psychopath who just buys everything and then regrets it later. But that's a different story.
Hey, you're talking to someone very similar.
Okay, cool.
I had the same exact kind of buying habit. And by the way,
to the club.
I switched over. You could still hear me okay on the phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Cool.
I'm just switching over to a battery pack so I didn't run out of juice while we talk.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, so Masters of the Universe is kind of rolling. You guys are getting the monthly subscription going with Matty Collector. Matty Collector is becoming a thing. People know about it in the toy industry. This is around 2007, 2008. Sometime in 2009, the announcement's made that there's going to be this line of Ghostbusters figures. If my memory says that the slimed Egon was the first figure. It was like a Comic-Con thing. Is that correct?
Oh, yep. There was a Egon with Slimer that was not supposed to be the first figure. The first figure was supposed to be slimed Peter with Slimer, which would have made a lot more sense.
Egon never got slimed.
And the reason we had to substitute Egon is because we were having trouble getting actor approval from Bill Murray.
Oh, big surprise.
He rejected the first couple head sculpts, and we got to a deadline, and we didn't have an approved Bill Murray head sculpt. So I think he wound up even being the fifth or sixth figure in the line. I think we did Walter Peck before we did our first Venkman figure.
I would love to see those.
I was just about to say I want to see those early Peter Venkmans.
Yeah. I bet he didn't even look at them. He just said, nope, pass.
They probably look great.
Yeah, they're probably amazing. So cool. So the announcement's made. So you mentioned it earlier. We never had movie accurate Ghostbusters figures before. NECA, I think in 2003, started a line of Ghostbusters figures that never went past the Terror Dogs, Slimer, and Gozer and Stay Puft. So they never did the actual guys. So you said earlier,
they just had the monster rights. They didn't even have they didn't have the rights to do the people.
Yeah, well, talk about that a little bit. So Sony comes to Mattel and says, "Hey, we like what you're doing. Or do they even know about Matty Collector? Does Sony just say it's the 25th anniversary of Ghostbusters? Do you have interest in doing figures? Like, what does that conversation look like?
I mean, it definitely was Sony approaching us, which is rare. Usually it's a toy company approaching a licensor saying, here's what we'd like to do if you would give us the license. But yes, Sony approached us both in recognition of Matty Collector existing and seeing that as a very good, avenue to get out classic product. But it was also because they were starting development on what eventually became the female Ghostbuster movie that came out, 3 years ago now?
Mm-hmm. It's about over 3 years now.
So they were already, development was already starting on what eventually became that film back then. And they were looking to lock in a toy partner for that film. So part of the contract that Mattel negotiated or signed, or our partnership with Sony, was that we were going to be able to do the classic figures on the contingency that we did a full retail line for the new movie.
Okay, and just to give people perspective, these negotiations are probably happening in like 07, 08 for Ghostbusters 3 for probably 2010, and it came out in 2016 and looked nothing like the movie that was being developed then, for all sorts of reasons that we've been talking about on this podcast for the last 3 years. So we don't have to go into that. So I've always wondered, so for that kind of deal, so you say you're going to launch the classic line, and then there's going to be a full retail line that's called a master toy license. How long does a deal like that last? Like, is it something where that contract's being renewed annually, or do you guys have the first rights to the movie when it eventually comes out, or do you even know? I know that's maybe more on a legal side of things.
Well, it's more that there really isn't a standard, and especially fast forwarding to now, and even fast forwarding to 2 years from now, when a lot of the major deals are going to start expiring, that most of the the IP holders are really not doing master licenses anymore.
Okay.
I mean, you look at Star Wars and the million ways that's been split up over different companies. Gentle Giant does action figures. Funko has their Pop. A great example is the Star Wars vehicles, the Titanium series that Hasbro put out, and the Star Wars Hot Wheels line were both out for episode 7, right? Force Awakens. And the product was almost identical, especially out of package.
Right.
And it was hanging right now. And so the term that tends to be called in the industry is slicing as opposed to licensing.
Oh, okay.
I like that. That sounds like a good horror film.
Yeah, the slicing. Mm-hmm.
It probably will be one day. So that's really the trend now, is where back in the day, you used to have one company, a Kenner, a Galoob, a Hasbro, a Mattel, and they would get the master license, and they would make all the toys from Hook or all the toys from the Flintstones movie. Now, everyone wants a toy line for their movies, and toys are now baked into. Like, toys used to be an afterthought. Now they're part of a marketing campaign. Mm-hmm. And there's really no longer will we see master toy licenses. It's more that they're getting split up over many, many, many different manufacturers, with differences between distribution, material, articulation. This guy has statues. This company can make things out of wood. This company can make things out of die cast. And you get a lot. I mean, how many 6-inch Kylo Rens are out there?
There's
how
like
many different
10 in my house.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Is that good? I don't know.
I mean, it's good for somebody, not me. But it's interesting because we look at NECA. We really love that company for what they're doing with all sorts of different lines and horror and everything. But we get questions all the time, like, how come certain companies can put out figures that are available exclusively online or at GameStop, and some are at Target? And like, I always tell people, like, I don't pretend to understand the way the toy industry works or licensing works. I just know that if it's happening, there's a reason for it, that that there's a contract that says somewhere you can do this and you can't do this.
Yeah, and it basically it comes down to that new trend in slicing where it's no longer like they're splicing up licenses not just by material, articulation, and scale, but by retailer. So Barnes & Noble can have a line of Star Wars vehicles that's identical to the Mattel line of Star Wars vehicles, but it's only available at Barnes & Noble. And yeah, I mean, whether you can argue whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea, but factually, that's why you see a lot of that is companies or IP holders are now slicing up their licenses based on where it's sold online, conventions only, Japan only. But then it's weird, you look at like things like, the Japanese 6-inch figures, but you can get them on Amazon here in the States. So it's very weird and it's very muddled. And with the end of Toys R Us, I think, there's a lot of changes going on in the toy industry. It's it's a very weird place.
Yeah. And we've been kind of discussing recently, trying to figure out what will happen with the Ghostbusters line for next year. Obviously, there's a new movie coming out next year, and there's going to be a major toy line of some sort. But we don't, there's rumors that Mattel's going to do it. There's rumors that Hasbro got the license. There's rumors that Hasbro's going to do retro Kenner figures. And it's all fun for us. We love speculating, but I appreciate the insight because now I feel like I know. Like I feel like I have an inside mind to know.
I know what slicing is.
Yes. Well, I'm going to be tweeting about slicing all the time now.
And and I could probably. I have no inside knowledge, if you will, on who Sony's working with. But what I can probably tell you is you're going to get product from multiple companies.
Oh, yeah. It's coming from all directions.
We really have no problem with that. We'll complain.
There'll be pop.
Yeah.
Oh, there's going to be pops.
I'm sorry, what happened?
I said we act like we're going to complain about that, but we're happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll buy the pops too.
We'll buy it all. We'll
complain, but yeah. We're going to buy it.
Scott, we do a thing around here called stress where we talk about how stressed we are about these things that we love and cherish. So it'll be like, oh man, I went to Target today. I was so stressed because I had to buy 4 Black Series figures and I wanted 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
like therapeutic.
It is therapeutic. But getting back to the Mattel line. So you launched with Egon, which is a Comic-Con exclusive. Just from an industry perspective and for you guys at Mattel, what was the response? Because I know as a fan, I was freaking out, but it kind of got me back into toy collecting in my young adult life. But what was that like for you guys internally?
Well, for me personally, it was a dream come true. Ghostbusters was absolutely. It was it was I guess the first license that Matty Collector got. Versus everything else previously was existing Mattel licenses or existing Mattel IP. So, like when I pitched Matty Collector, it never occurred to me that I'd be getting to work on Ghostbuster toys. So that, to me alone was mind blowing. And I was like, I can't believe I'm working on this. This is unbelievable. It definitely got, we got the cover of Toy Fair magazine and we were getting that kind of buzz. And I think the fact that for Mattel, they were actually more looking at the fact that this was going to lock them in the movie rights to the new movie. Because the old movie toys, the cartoon toys back in the 80s was a very big line for Kenner. And Mattel, at the time was essentially looking at that as wow, we make a couple of these low run Matty Collector figures, and we're going to score this amazing evergreen, kids line at retail with where basically the play pattern is very unique. It's sort of it's squashing your fears. It's a line about capturing ghosts. Mm-hmm. So that's a very unique play pattern for children. No other line really offers that, where it's giving kids the ability to get rid of the boogeyman in his closet. And that's one of the reasons the line did so well. That and the fact that all the goofy action features, I think, were very popular. So as a company, that's what Mattel was excited about, was that this was basically a lock-in for them to what they hope would be a multi-$100 million retail line for kids. Matty Collector is, and always was just a side project that they let me run because I was willing to do it. It was also never my actual job at Mattel. It was always something I did, quite literally at night and on the weekends. My job was running the DC retail lines. I think the proof in the pudding for this is basically because when I left, the fact that I was never replaced. And that's because it was never a job. It was, it's someone from Hot Wheels. You laugh about it now. But it's like if the brand manager for Hot Wheels quits, well, that immediately triggers a new hiring position because they have to replace that. Matty Collector was just something that Crazy Scott was willing to do, and because I got to work on Ghostbusters and He-Man, and so when I left, there was no job rec fill, which is why Matty Collector kind of collapsed because it was never a job; it was a hobby that they let me do, essentially.
So when you say low run, you're talking about just the sheer number of units produced of any one given figure, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
they were much lower than we would for a retail toy.
So, and if you can't give exact numbers, I understand, but let's say a regular retail on the racks at Walmart, Target, fully distributed. What kind of numbers are we looking at for a regular toy line, like Batman or Star Wars or something like that?
From the high end, I had heard that when Hasbro relaunched Star Wars in '95, they were doing like 250,000 units a figure.
Right. Okay. Which is insane. So to think that's why it's like we just watched this documentary on Netflix about the baseball card boom of the 80s and 90s and how like it was a complete racket because like the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card was worth $200 or $300 and Upper Deck just kept printing it. So there was like 1 million of them and they could just make more. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. So that's why Power of the Force figures are like $6 and never more because there's, 250,000 of every figure. But when you think about something like Matty Collector, I'm guessing the low thousands, maybe a couple thousand units for a Peter Venkman or a Ray Stantz, something like that.
Yeah, more or less. Absolutely. It was, and that's why we had to upcharge because the lower the run, if you're producing the vendors, the factories in China have what's called an MOQ, a minimum order quantity. And anytime you're producing under that, the premium just keeps going up. And the lower the run, the higher the premium. So one of the reasons the Matty toys cost more than retail toys is because we had to compensate for how low the run was.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think, listen, the Matty Collector forums and message boards, I had a lot of fun on those. And I think we can all say that fans and collectors can get a little, I don't know, testy, insane. Scott, I know you probably had your fair share of moments. We can get into that later or we don't have to. But I think it's important for people to understand, it's really easy to be like, I can't find this figure. That's ridiculous. Or why did I have to pay more on eBay? Like there's usually a reason for whatever's happening.
And a big part of that is, without retail support, without Walmart's 3,000 doors or Target's 2,000 doors or Toys R Us's 1,000, it's very difficult to find a home for product. And when you're doing very low runs like that, I think that the subscription model really helped on all ends because for Mattel, it helped guarantee. That was really the only, when you heard me begging people for subscriptions and stuff for all of the lines, that was because that really was what was needed. Without that guaranteed number, Mattel, looked at, Mattel was and still is a very big company. And without the for a retail line, they have to have that retail order from, Target or Walmart or everybody. And for the Matty lines, we had our minimum that we had to hit. And without that, Mattel wasn't going to greenlight it and they weren't going to let us produce it. That's why you saw things like the Ghostbusters and the DC subscriptions kind of dying out when we didn't hit the numbers. That's why I was always begging people so much to subscribe, because literally that was it. Like, if you want these toys, you had to step up. And we were breaking new ground. I mean, we were doing these kind of, I mean, it was basically almost like a Kickstarter. You look at things like the Sail Barge and, versus like Castle Grayskull or the subscriptions. And we were doing what, Hasbro's doing with the HasLab, 10 years ago, when, it was kind of unheard of.
It was unheard of.
That's also why people were a little uncomfortable, because this wasn't how they were used to buying toys.
Yeah.
We were asking collectors to essentially play the part of a retailer and invest a year in advance. And the reward for that was they were going to get these really obscure characters in collector scale. So, yeah, it was weird. It was, we were breaking new ground, not even realizing what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like crowdfunding a Cookie Monster.
Woo.
That's another story for another day.
Crowdfunding a Cookie Monster. Yeah. What are they up to? Like 100 people?
It's not going well.
Yeah,
but I've got my sail barge is sitting right behind me. That was a big deal on the podcast.
Yeah, we coined the term barge as like a verb. It's on Urban Dictionary, actually, like to make a purchase that you can't really afford, but you justify because you're like emotionally into it.
Wow, that's great.
That's not the exact title, but if you look for barge in the Urban Dictionary,
like used in a sentence, it's like, oh, I barged hard on a vintage collection X-Wing today. I can't pay my cell phone bill now, but I'll deal with that later.
That's fantastic. And we only wanted $250 for the castle.
I know, and like the thing is, I'm not a Masters of the Universe guy, but I wanted that castle because I was like, if they do the castle. And then, what's a Snake Mountain? Is that what it's called? The second one? I don't know. I'm a bad nerd.
You did good.
That's pretty good. I did pretty good there. But never got that firehouse.
Well, we tried to do Ecto-1, if you remember.
I'm sorry?
We did it. We tried to do an Ecto-1 as the same method.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's going to be $300.
So I want to talk about that, and I want to kind of roll that into a bigger question. So the Ecto-1, that was like a big thing in the community. Like, holy shit, we're going to get this 6-inch scale Ecto-1. It really rolls. It's going to be amazing. It's going to have lights and electronics, and we're going to crowdfund it. And it fell way short, which was unfortunate for everybody. So let's talk about that, because I know that's probably not like your highlight of working at Mattel. But I want you to talk about that. And then did something like that, or the general line of Mattel, Ghostbusters, maybe not hitting the minimum subscriptions, did that give Mattel some pause? Because you said earlier, like, this was going to be, a multi-million dollar franchise, and we're going to roll out with this new toy line, and we're going to reinvigorate all these kids from the 80s. Was there some raised eyebrows saying, like, maybe this line isn't as viable as we originally hoped for?
I think really the answer to that question, a little bit of a reality check, is that nothing on Matty Collector ever, outside of, getting the Ghostbuster retail line, it really never registered with anyone in management. I used to tell people, online, Matty Collector doesn't move the stock price. And, that all Mattel's, achievement, if you will, or goal with the Ghostbusters line was to launch a new entertainment-based kid line at retail. If you will, the price for doing that was putting out a couple collector figures, and Scott's willing to do that on top of his job. Great. So it was a win for Mattel. They didn't have to hire someone to do it or pay someone to do it, as a specific job. And they obviously paid me, but that was to run the DC line at retail. And it was really just a core group of us, there were designers, package designers that were really excited to do things like the Ecto-1. And, of course we were crushed when it didn't happen, but nothing we ever did on Matty really, again, the proof in the pudding is the fact that it was never a job. I wasn't replaced when I left. Basically that kind of sums up the sort of Mattel's, I guess, corporate attitude towards it. It's like, hey, it's a great thing, but it's, we're only really willing to do it because the people working on it are willing to work on it in their spare time because they love toys. And, great. Like if it, as long as it's, making money and breaking even and, not costing us, Mattel, the company, anything. And one of the things that really did help shut it down was all the negativity. When executives would Google Matty Collector in meetings on the giant screen, and they would see fan sites, ripping into Matty or me or that kind of stuff. That was actually the only thing that ever triggered upper management, was that they were seeing bad press about the company.
I don't mean to laugh.
Why are we keeping this going?
I don't mean to laugh, but my thought was negativity from the Ghostbusters community. That can't be real.
Can't believe it.
Toy fans,
that's what we're good at.
Or something?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it did. No, toy fans be emotional about something? I've never heard of
Right.
that.
I can't believe it. Like freaking out and threatening to never buy something that you weren't planning on buying in the first place.
Sense of entitlement? What?
Yeah. But Jake, I know you were heartbroken over that Ecto one. I didn't know you back then, but I feel like a connected spirit from whatever that was, 2012.
Yeah, well, just like you kind of said earlier, this line was kind of also what got me back into collecting like really hardcore. Like I was super excited about the whole subscription thing, and that for me was easier to get a hold of it, especially like living in a town where there aren't a whole lot of great stores for buying toys. So I really like the whole subscription idea of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, who wasn't? Like we were all bummed about that Ecto.
Yeah. Yeah. Because to you gotta have the car. You got the Ghostbuster. You gotta have the car.
I mean, it's a big that Matty Collect, like that's a big line of figures, and we both, Craig, like we both own that entire line. Like it's a good line.
I'm looking at it right now. Mine's loose. Jake's is mint on card. That's where we differ, Scott.
Yeah.
Nothing loose at all.
No. I have the entire line still in package. Yeah.
Wow, I think I just have Vigo in package still.
I never opened. I still got all my mailers and everything.
Oh, it's amazing.
That's impressive. You have the space.
Barely.
He doesn't.
Barely.
I actually have the entire line except for I don't have the Comic-Con Zool, but I do have 3 test shot prototypes. One doesn't have a head.
That's my favorite.
So,
oh, the Dana, the Dana figure.
Yeah. And that's a great figure too. So, I wanted to ask you about the retail line. So, I think it's kind of like in the history of this line, people forget about the retro Real Ghostbusters, like Migos style figures that I think those were all Toys R Us exclusives. I could be wrong. But was that a successful part of the line, and did it kind of exist outside of the normal Matty Collector stuff, or you were super involved in that too?
Short answer, yes with an if. Long answer, no with a but.
All right.
It was, yes, I was. That was a lot. I mean, that was another line that I pitched, and handled. That was kind of sort of a crossover between what I was doing at retail for DC, because we'd done the retro action figures for the DC superheroes, and essentially because we now had this tooling for, there's not that many acceptable scales or what you would call form factors for toys. You got your 6-inch, you got your 3 3/4, you have your Migos style. Now you have your Pop. But so now that we had part of the pitch of doing the DC line was, I basically said, look, once we have these bodies, we could do this with a ton of properties. And Ghostbusters was kind of the first test to see if we could do that, and it just failed miserably.
Sorry.
We gave it to Toys R Us as an exclusive, essentially because every retailer really in order to buy into mainline product, all of the retailers kind of demand, their own line, either their own segment, their own version, a subline, et cetera. And because Toys R Us had more aisle space, when we met with them at our annual sales pitch, we were able to say, and as part of our customized program for you, you guys can be the exclusive home of Ghostbusters retro action figures. And they loved it. We loved it. We thought it'd be a huge success. and it just totally bombed.
Well, I owned all of them. I mean,
I'm glad someone bought them.
I like those figures. I do have the Janine and Sam Hain in package. It's one of those things where I wonder if the nostalgia, because I feel like nostalgia for nostalgia in general is at an all-time high, but I think nostalgia for Ghostbusters is bigger than it ever has been, because obviously you're not with Mattel anymore, but you're very familiar with the toy industry. I'm sure you keep up with it. There's tons of Ghostbusters product. Diamond Select did a line of real Ghostbusters figures last year that, according to them, did extremely well. So there's part of me that wonders sometimes if maybe almost like the crowdfunding thing, you guys were just a little bit too early on it. Like,
it's a timing issue, maybe.
Would Matty Collector launching, this year be would there be some different outcomes? Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, and I think also a lot of that had to do with the fact that those were at retail and there were different expectations and different, much higher quotas versus if we had just done those on Matty Collector.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, you could look back and there's a lot, you could definitely overanalyze things to death, but at the end of the day, Target's got a Mego line right now of some really obscure properties.
Yeah.
Cheers.
We are familiar.
And they're on, and they're on super clearance already. So,
we picked up the Alice from the Brady Bunch.
Yes.
Because it was on clearance.
Alice,
yeah.
Axe-wielding Alice.
But I was wondering.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, with that Mego line that's at Target now, that's nostalgic, but that's different. That's like weird 70s properties that I don't know. Like, I feel like right now we're in kind of that, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Mattel, they're doing really well with the Jurassic Park line. By the way, when I say that, I'm only going by what I read.
Yeah, and what we talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, I think the Jurassic Park line at Mattel is doing really well, but I could be completely wrong. But it seems like it's doing well.
It must be. It's been constantly going since Jurassic World came out, constantly. Yep. So it must be.
Obviously they wouldn't be shipping if it wasn't selling.
Exactly.
It finds a way.
Sorry. That's good.
Thank you. That's why I'm here.
That was good. Toys find a way. That should be a shirt.
We're making it.
All right, cool. Scott, we need your silhouette for that shirt.
Yes.
Like a profile. So one thing I've always, people kind of do the what ifs for these kinds of lines. Were there any figures that you really wanted to do or that almost happened or anything that didn't make it into, because the line, there's a lot in the line. Like, you get most of what you could do with Ghostbusters minus a few ghosts, and there's not a Janine figure. Here, there's a question. Why was there no Janine in Matty Collector?
And that was actually probably one of my answers was Janine was, definitely one that really wanted to do. And one of the two reasons we couldn't do it was, one, it was 100% tooled. There were no shared parts.
Right.
I mean, granted, we did have the Vigo was almost a fully tooled figure, but there were actually some licensing restrictions on where I think we could only do Janine for movie 2 or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but I know it was something weird like that. And it really just came to the fact that we couldn't afford the tooling. We barely afforded Vigo, who was, I think, one of the only fully tooled figures. And that it was completely a tooling issue. Ghostbusters was doable because of we could reuse the bodies so much, and just do a couple different untucked or tucked legs, different proton packs. That's doing. Obviously Janine was absolutely something we wanted to do. The Terror Dogs were also a huge one that we tried so hard to do, especially because we knew we could kind of get a twofer out of it, where we could tool one body and then do two different heads. And it almost made it a couple times. I know it was on the sheet the year I left as a Comic-Con 2-pack. And then after I left, whoever was running it just didn't follow through with that, and it never happened. So
I'm so mad at that person. I'm very upset at that person. So I'm trying to get the time. So what year did you leave Mattel, actually?
2014. 14. I want to say, I think 14.
Okay, so I'm trying to think. The weird thing about the Matty Collector or the Mattel Ghostbusters figures is that there was kind of remnants of it still being released. Like there was the packless Ghostbusters with the 2-packs for the 30th anniversary. And I give, again, to give people perspective, the original figures came out in the 25th anniversary. So there was a 5-year stretch. And then there was the Egon figure, the Courtroom Egon, that was a Comic-Con exclusive. Were you involved in pushing that one out?
So that was my last year at Mattel, basically, and I was only able to get that Egon figure out because when Harold Ramis unfortunately passed, I was able to kind of give it the hook to management that we could we'd be able to sell it because it could be we could do it in memoriam and it could celebrate Harold Ramis, and it was low tooling because we already had the body. But yeah, I mean, it was the sales on the Ghostbuster figures towards the end were just getting so low. Really, once you got past the main guys from the first movie, we were having a really hard time selling anybody. I mean, that's why the subscription for Ghostbusters didn't make it the second year. And, also why Janine and Janosch and, all these other characters we wanted to do that were high tooling, you basically had to sell 5 or 6 figures with minimum tooling to justify one figure with high tooling, which is why you saw lots of iterations of the Ghostbusters or the guys in suits, Courtroom, or the TV commercial versions. So it was those figures allowed us to do, the Dana or the Vigo, or something like that, where it had a lot more tooling. But the sales just kept ducking off to the point that management wasn't really going to let us do the Egon figure because they were looking at the sales from the previous figure and saying, hey, the sales don't justify us doing the minimum run. And I did my whole song and dance, and I begged and I pleaded, and I showed how it completed an existing set and was needed. And, Mr. Ramis had just passed, so we could really make it, celebrating his life. And they're like, all right, fine, Scott. If you'll shut up, we'll let you do it.
I love the idea of being in a meeting with a bunch of Mattel executives. You don't understand. For 5 minutes in Ghostbusters 2, they're all 3 wearing suits in a courtroom. And if we don't do the last figure, it won't be complete. And if you don't complete it, it'll be bad for everybody's OCD and it's going to be a problem. I thank you. I love that figure.
And honestly, I can tell you, as a toy collector myself, it was frustrating. The answer you would always get was, they should be glad for what they're getting.
Oh my God, I'm so mad. I'm getting rid of all my toys.
They should, yeah. I mean, that really frustrated me sometimes, especially on the He-Man line, when we would have, issues with, fans had big issues with the way the female pelvises were held together and, different color choices. Frosta wasn't the color white people wanted. And all the time, the answer I would always get is they're getting a Frosta. Shut up.
Yeah.
They should be happy they're even getting this. And I'd be like, oh, you don't understand the emotional connection.
Yeah.
That's why they let me. That's why they let me do it, because I was willing to do it, because I had the emotional connection.
Yeah. You're on the other side. You're like J.J. Abrams with The Force Awakens. You're like, you get it. And
you get it.
Yeah. We respect that.
Because
that's how we feel about those figures and about the movies we love. So
yep.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that Courtroom Egon. It comes with a ton of cool accessories. I've got mine holding his thermal mug with the Ghostbusters 2 logo on
Love
it.
Love it.
So that's for the kids. Mm-hmm. Jake actually has a exact replica of the actual mug, and I think I need to steal that from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can borrow it.
Okay, thank you. So,
you can borrow it.
Scott, as we wind down here, one thing I remember, there was a Comic-Con presentation, I think near the end of the line, that kind of teased a relaunch of the real Ghostbusters, and it never happened. Can you talk about that at all? Were you involved in any of the pre-planning, or what was that going to be? That's kind of a question I've always had.
Yeah, so basically, when I left, the toy industry works 2 years ahead. So when I left in 2014, plans for 15 and 16 were already very baked and or in the oven baking. So what you saw at Comic-Con that year after, which was, I think I left in maybe in the fall, September, October, something like that. And then so Comic-Con's 6 months later. Everything you're seeing at that presentation, and even for the next year that were released, were all things that I heavily worked on. And I think I've even explained to some people, whether off the record or on the record, that basically everything that happened with Matty Collector after I left was the 3/4 tank full of gas that I left, and they never refilled it. So they basically just kept running Matty on what I had done in place, but they never developed anything new because, again, like I said, they didn't. What they should have done when I left is hired someone to replace me. But because it was never a job in the first place, under Mattel, spreadsheet bureaucracy where they have a list of all of the jobs, because that never existed, and no one ever, when I left, they didn't replace me because it didn't pop up as an open position to replace. They literally just kind of like whatever was in the tank, they kept going with. And when it came down to that real Ghostbusters line, we had developed, it was going to be a 3 3/4 line.
Oh, wow.
The whole, I think I had the Slimer from it somewhere because they got sculpted. I mean, I was really shocked that they didn't come out because they definitely got pretty far along, but I think, again, because nobody was sitting at my desk, someone obviously was sitting in my cubicle, but nobody was,
doing the work
over for Matty Collector.
Yeah.
I mean, it just kind of fell apart because there was no one. I said a few times, I think, on the He-Man forums how toy lines like this needed an internal champion. And
you got to have an advocate, right?
Like, yeah. And, I got thrown under the bus by fans a lot for saying that, but it really was true. You needed someone in the company who was fighting to make these toys, like the way I explained about that Egon courtroom. So I don't want to say without me, but without just anyone who wanted to run Matty Collector. And one of the big reasons no one wanted to run it was because of how vocal the fans were. For me, I didn't care what the fans said. To me, all that was important was getting the toys out. But that's also one of the reasons I had to leave Mattel, was because I was essentially working for toys. And kind of the realization that it wasn't until I left Mattel that I realized I was doing the job of 4 people.
Yeah.
And when I got a job at another toy company, I was like, whoa, this is all I'm responsible for?
This is insane.
I want to work for toys.
Jake, we need you to be an advocate. You need to get in there.
Fill the role.
Jake, you need to walk into Mattel and be like, we know about the 3 3/4 inch real Ghostbusters
We know
figures.
they're out there.
We want them now.
We want those. Scott, that's really interesting. Like, we are as plugged into this stuff as you can be, and I've never heard that line was going to be that scale and that it was sculpted. So that's a good nugget of information. I would
for sure.
If you come across that Slimer, I'd love to see a picture.
Oh
of
yeah,
it.
we definitely would.
I'll have to dig around. I know it when we moved. I think I saw it, so I'll see what I can do. I'll keep my eye out for it.
Yeah, and who knows? Like that, maybe and the thing is, like, it's really easy to kind of like say, oh, that would have been amazing. But like, there's plenty of lines. Whether it's sometimes you go to a store and there's like, for like that new Power Rangers Legacy line that supposedly is really hard to find and rare to find, like the White Ranger and Lord Zed. Mm-hmm. I see it every day at Target and Walmart, 5 of them just stacked up. So I think people's perspective of what's actually rare or what will sell is usually skewed by what your own personal interests are. Mm-hmm. I know you. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I just said yes. I mean, completely. And the internet makes people louder than they are numerous. I mean, you get 20 people posting over and over again. I had Mattel Analytics do a review of the message boards, and it really wound up there was only like 20 people.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah. And they probably
they're so vocal and it's reverberating, yeah.
Did a couple quick ones if you got a few more minutes. There was always people asking for Proton Pack. I know that would have been a big ticket item, and you guys did the other props. Was there ever any serious discussion of trying to do that?
There was, yeah. Oh wow, the props were absolutely one of my favorite things that we did. Beyond, I think, and I'm looking at them right here. I've got them in my office.
You know that PKE meter goes for like $300 now? I'm still waiting for another Mad Matty Monday where I can get a $40 PKE meter and a couple figures because those days have long sailed.
And don't start me on that hoverboard. That's a whole other story.
I completely forgot about all that.
I did too. Yeah,
that's great.
The hate mail I used to get because it didn't actually float. You have no idea.
Oh wow! This is bullshit.
I'm sorry that anti-gravity technology doesn't exist.
Power.
Toy Guru, you have failed us. You have failed humanity.
Humanity does rest on life. The Proton Pack, your question, yes. So when we were actually doing Castle Grayskull was when we had a lot of discussions about the Proton Pack. And one of the problems was just the sheer cost, and as well as a vendor that could do it because it wasn't made of plastic. It wasn't a traditional toy like all of Mattel's existing vendors. We would have, we had to work with electronics vendors and vendors that could, do things with metal and welding. And it was just a tremendous amount of work that, one of the reasons we were able to get away with what we did on Matty, again, was all the shared tooling. And it was the same basic process of making a Barbie doll was making a Ghostbusters or, a He-Man figure on Matty was, more or less the same core competency. When we were doing things like the ghost traps, and then the hoverboard, that was, it was kind of outside of Mattel's normal manufacturing process, for lack of a better word. So finding vendors and it just required more work than was kind of justifiable, for lack of a better word. We definitely looked into it. It just came out so expensive. I want to say, though, it was on the plans again for 2016 when I left as kind of the big ticket item for that year, especially because with the movie coming out, I think they were going to try to tie it into that. But again, like I said, when I left, they just, the tank was 75% full and they ran it until it ran out of gas and nobody ever refilled the tank. And then they just closed it down.
Yeah. And it's weird because the 2016 line of Ghostbusters figures that did come out from Mattel was, it's pretty weak. Like it just wasn't, it was almost like they didn't know who to market that movie to. And there was a couple figures and like, obviously bought them all twice or three times, but, and I remember back in the day, you always being like, the possibilities for this line are endless, but we really need, you got to have a piece of entertainment to build off of. You got to have a movie or an animated series or a video game or something happening in the mainstream in order to keep this thing going. Mm-hmm. And another funny thing, I don't know how close you're paying attention, but they're still using remnants of this line. They just put out, they're putting out these Ghostbusters WWE mashup figures, and all of the Proton Packs and traps and everything are all from the Matty Collector figures.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I remember seeing the Walmart line of the classic figures. Yeah. And that was actually always what my intention was. And that's why I always insisted all of the Matty figures had more deco and more accessories, because the plan was always in a movie year. Like when I saw that Walmart line, I actually got a big smile. So I'm like, oh, someone did the right thing. This is exactly what the point was to take these existing tools and then release them at retail. So that I remember getting a chuckle out of. So yeah, hey, it's great that the tooling is getting used for something.
We have the tooling, we have the talent. So as we wrap up here, Scott, you left Mattel. What did you do? Where did you go after that?
I spent a variety of time at some smaller toy companies, Jax, Jada, doing the nano metal figures that Jada does. That was me. Actually, that was completely me. Okay. I came in and pitched that using the old Kenner Star Wars 1982 figures and said, "Hey, we should do this."
And there's Ghostbusters in that line too, right? Well, I think I have those. The metal Ghostbusters.
Yep. So did that at Jada, did a very short stint at Loot Crate, reorganizing their inventory. They were kind of thinking about doing like a Matty Collector where you would buy stuff, but that never happened. And then I was at Entertainment Earth for a while, also working on sort of their internal production stuff. Pinmates was one of kind of the flagship line of that, which I think is now at Target on an end cap that just launched. And then after all of that, I was in California for 15 years, and the family kind of said, you know what, I've got a kid now. We need a yard. We need some bigger space. Came out to beautiful North Carolina, and I started a consulting firm, SpectorCreative.com, named after a certain He-Man figure I made.
Yes.
And I do consulting for both the toy industry and retailers and licensors, helping people who have product or ideas for product get it to market, whether it's getting it to Target and Walmart or selling it on Amazon or setting up their own kind of MattyCollector.com. I have several clients that have stuff, that they build websites that they sell through. So anyone out there in Ghostbusters land who has ideas for a product, if you looking for someone to help you get it to market, just head over to SpectorCreative.com and you can check out what I do.
Oh, I've got an idea.
We're going to head over there, I think.
Here's an idea. How about a 6-inch Matty Collector Janine figure? How do I get that to market? Just kidding. That's a joke.
You'd probably have to pay about $50,000 in tooling right off the bat.
Ooh, good. I just found that
people don't
recently.
realize a fully cooled figure costs as much as a luxury car.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's great. That's also really great that you can use your toy industry experience to kind of help out people and kind of work for yourself, which I'm sure is a lot better than standing in front of a boardroom of Mattel executives.
Yeah. I get to send myself home early every day. So it's great. I work for my toy room. So it's pretty fantastic.
Cool.
I do really enjoy it.
Last question.
We podcast from our toy room.
We really appreciate you going down this little trip down memory lane. What are you collecting now? What gets you excited in the world of toys that are your must-haves?
Well, I'm still an obsessive over original trilogy Star Wars 3 3/4. So like tracking down that Comic-Con Luke pack was a big one for me, since there's sort of so far and few between that they still put those out.
Right. I just got my
Marvel Legends there.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I've kind of dipped my toes back into that world. So I've got some vintage, and like I told you earlier, we got the barge, and I got my skiff and my skiff guards. So things are good for me.
Yep. I'm looking at my skiff right now, being driven by that new skiff driver. So that they just put out. And then Marvel Legends is a big one. I kind of zoomed in on Spider-Man villains and like 1992 X-Men, and they're definitely putting out a lot.
You got Jake.
Right now.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah, those are. I mean, I think what Hasbro's doing with Marvel Legends is it's never been better, and I'm watching my shelf just absolutely fill up with amazing like Jim Lee mutants, and that makes me very happy.
And are you surprised when you see, like, when you look back on Mattel, like they just announced they're doing a new retail retro line of Masters of the Universe? It's kind of funny because it's almost like history repeating itself. I was like, didn't they already do this like 12 years ago?
Yeah, I definitely keep up on, I do both professionally and, as a toy fan on sort of what everyone does. And yeah, I saw what they launched at Comic-Con, and, I kind of have my He-Man line, classics. I'm glad we finished it and did every vintage figure. That was one of my, I think, most proud moments at Mattel, was finishing the Motu Classics line. There's a lot of weird, because Super 7 was doing 5-inch scale, and now Mattel's doing 5-inch scale, and Super 7's not. I can kind of keep up. For me, I have my He-Man line. It's kind of done. And to me, actually, that's one of my favorite parts about a toy, and this might be a great way to wrap up the podcast. I love when a toy line ends. That's one of my favorite times, because, especially when it ends complete, because you could say, I have them all. And you're done, and you have a sense of relief. It's like when I was saying about the Star Wars 3 3/4 classic trilogy, part of me kind of wants them to, it's been going on for, 50 years or whatever. I almost want it to stop. I have them all.
Stop it.
Even though there's like some obscure Cantina alien I want.
Right.
But, I like that about both Justice League Unlimited and Motu Classics, and definitely to a degree the Ghostbusters line from Matty, that it really, you could Janine and Terror Dogs aside, it's nice to be able to say they're done. I have them on my shelf. My shelf is complete, and I feel good, and I can relax. Yes. Now I can move on to the next obsession.
That's great. Yeah. I like that. That is a good way to end.
We're completists at heart, like all of us.
Yes.
So it's a good feeling.
And it's frustrating when you can't, when it just keeps going.
White whale.
Yeah, they're all white whales. Scott, real quick, I know you plugged it already, but go ahead and tell everybody your website one more time, and then we'll, because we want to make sure everybody knows what you're up to.
Oh, sure. Thanks. So it's Spector with an O, SpectorCreative.com. And it's all about doing branding, retail placement, and toy design for people who have kind of concepts but don't really know how to get it to the next level. And I love doing that, and I have a huge passion for it. So, anyone out there who wants to just check out what I'm up to and kind of see my portfolio, you probably will recognize most of the stuff on there because it's a lot of the stuff that's probably on your guys' shelf. SpectorCreative.com.
Cool. All right.
Nice.
Thank you, Scott, Toy Guru. Appreciate this this Matty Collector memory.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for hanging out,
dude.
man.
Absolutely. I'd never get a chance to talk toys, so it's really actually my pleasure, too. So thank you guys so much for inviting me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We learned a lot. Thanks.
For sure.
Thanks, man.